Anya Von Bremzen, thank you for this interview. You were born in Russia. What was the first food you ate?
It must have been black bread, although of course one doesn't remember the very first food one eats. In Russia they had a thing called the communal apartment where a lot of families lived together. It was a socialist thing when after the 1917 revolution they divided big apartments and they put a lot of families there. So we grew up 18 people sharing one kitchen. So I think my first memory was just of that, terrible smells of all the people cooking. There was a little old lady who stole people's meats from the pot. These communal apartments were like a microcosm of the Soviet society. There was a Jewish person, and next door was an anti-Semitic person. There was a hidden millionaire who couldn't live openly. So there was a really poor person. So we had a hidden millionaire next to, in the room next to ours, and they cooked incredible things that all the Russians couldn't taste, like chicken breasts. Like in Russia, there was shortages of everything, and they just fried the chicken breast, and then they didn't eat it, and they threw it into the garbage. So we would pick up things. Basically, we ate, other people's garbage. This is, this was the Soviet life.
And how was the taste of this black bread? Was it good? Do you remember it? Was it sweet?
It was sour, and it smelled, intensely of dough. It was very, very sourdough. I mean, it was a very quintessential Russian smell. As children, we would go to a bakery, there would be these bricks of bread, with kind of hard skin, and if they fell on your foot, they would hurt you. They were, heavy rectangular bricks, and sometimes we would just go and smell them in the bakery. There was something very primal and very important about the smell. And we knew that bread was very important because when you went to a bakery and you dropped a piece of bread on the floor, there would always be some person who remembered World War II who started yelling at you for not eating the bread. And of course, your parents and your grandparents told you how they starved. So you're very much aware of the value of bread. It was kind of moist and porous. And, Russians had a lot of open-faced sandwiches. They called them butterbrod, which is a German word. So if you were lucky enough to have a piece of salami on this black bread, that's kind of what I remember most.
Did you have a traditional Moscow cuisine or a Russian cuisine?
It was Soviet cuisine, because after the revolution, the whole idea of a cuisine, first of all, was obliterated, because cuisine was a bourgeois contamination. Food was supposed to be fuel. It was supposed to be utilitarian. So people improvised cuisines, and the Soviet cuisine was very industrialized because they believed that was, something very progressive, and Stalin, in his day, was very obsessed with industrialization. And he had a food commissar who industrialized the Soviet food industry. They were very proud of it. So there were a lot of cans, canned juices, canned peas, canned carrots, everything. If you were lucky to get them, canned mayonnaise. That was Soviet cuisine.
And did you used to eat together with people, or each person used to eat when they were hungry simply?
No, everyone ate together. There was, there's certain things that were really, really essential. Not only eating together, the most important thing was drinking together. As you know, Russians drank a lot, and they had a division. What distinguishes an alcoholic from just a person who drinks? Alcoholic would drink alone, and there was just anathema, a terrible thing. You could not drink. You were not supposed to drink alone. So even having a tea, you call the neighbors, you would not even have a tea by yourself. It was a very convivial culture in that way, and food was very scarce. It was difficult to get, and it was to be shared. So another feature of the communal apartments, weirdly, while people stole your food, they would also share.
And when you arrived in US, did you start eating hamburgers or something else?
No, it was another disappointment, because the whole idea of the West was very much connected with food. That we thought it was going to be abundant and wonderful, and incredible things would be growing on trees. But food in Russia was very hard to procure, and it was always celebrated. And then, I remember going to this American supermarket, this enormous, huge supermarket, and you could have everything, and it just lost its value. I just remember being completely just standing there and saying, okay, food didn't mean anything anymore. And we tried the hot dogs, and they were sour and they're full of nitrates, and everything was strange. It just didn't taste natural to us because it was, full of preservatives, and we didn't know how to cook it, and all the cereal. I mean, like, who eats a cereal? The way the Americans eat, some crunchy thing with cold milk, I was like, what's this all about?
So it didn't make sense to you?
Nothing made sense, and nothing tasted good. It was just a huge kind of, I write about it, I have a whole chapter in my book about it, how after so many years, of having mythologizing the West, you finally attained the bounty and the abundance, and it meant nothing.
That's sad.
It was very sad.
And when did the Western food start to taste good for you?
It's an interesting question. This was the 70s. The food was very industrial. It took a while. My mother started cooking, our own Russian things. I think when we kind of tried to recover the Russian things that we missed, and little by little. I remember the 80s very well. The first, gourmet fashion. Good bread, good baguettes. Suddenly you could have crepes. I started living in New York. There was Greek food, Chinese food, Italian food. It suddenly made sense because when we came to America, it was suburban Philadelphia, and it was just a terrible place to be. So just like industrial and.
So the ethnic food saved you.
I think very much so. Yeah. And we settled in New York in a very multi-ethnic neighborhood, and suddenly the house smelled of food. There's always Latino neighbors. They threw parties. They made lechon asado. All this Latin foods. Everything smelled of garlic again. So I could taste again.
So you were happy again. You are one of the first writers who started to understand that Ferran Adrià and Massimo Bottura would become really great cooking stars. How did you understand that they were special?
Well, Ferran, you just encounter something you've never encountered before. It was like after figurative painting, discovering Cézanne. I mean, it was just that kind of paradigmatic shift, and I went the first time in '95. There was nobody in El Bulli, it was completely empty. And I was there with my ex-boyfriend, who was an art critic, and he said, this is not food, this is, contemporary art. And Ferran had a picture of a portrait of Dali in his kitchen. So it was really like, seeing Matisse, Demoiselle d'Avignon, Remember, that kind of historic thing that just like nothing was what it was supposed to be. Everything was a shift. Now we take it for granted. We're so used to, the foaming, the, sweetness, but everything he did was completely revolutionary. And I thought to myself, well, this person is going to change the world of perception of food, or we're complete Philistines. And it happened, and we talked to Ferran after the dinner. We talked to Ferran for hours and hours and hours. Massimo Bottura, he had a very lovely trattoria. It was like an upmarket trattoria, and I thought, well, here's somebody who's really, really talented. I didn't think he was going to change the world. I just thought, here's somebody who's cooking in a very traditional way, that is at the same time very modern and very fresh. And this is what kind of you wanted in Italy. It was, again, '93. So people either made a heavy trattoria food, especially in Emilia-Romagna. You went to Giusti, you had the tortelline, or you had this kind of, Gualtiero Marchese, kind of Armani cuisine, which it was just too minimal. It was kind of brittle. Those days of Marchese, I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
Okay, the risotto d'oro.
The risotto d'oro.
It was funny for Italians because it exemplified a certain cultural aspect of Italy. Yes. But otherwise it was like, okay, what's the big deal? So I thought Massimo, what he was doing was something exactly in the middle. It was modern and clean and kind of Armani-esque, but at the same time it didn't lose the tradition. It was just like a really good bridge. And then he developed, and we talked about, I told him then about Ferran, and then in front of my eyes, he changed very much.
Sometimes we have the impression that when you go to great restaurants, you love the food at the moment, but then you forget what you ate. Do you have the same impression?
Yes. I mean, like that meal from Ferran, I remember every dish. This is for me the measure of a great meal, that I remember every day. No way you can remember, but the good ones you remember. And the ones you think are good at the time, but I cannot remember anything that I ate. Well, it's meant to be forgotten.
And the ancient Latin word remembering, ricordare, there is a mention of heart, because cordis is the heart. So somehow remembering meant for them to put in your heart.
Yeah.
Do you think there is something like that we have to do with food? Try to see or to put in our heart memory?
Well, as I said before, I think that the nature of memory has changed completely. I don't know what the future will be. I think heart is probably largely absent from it, unless we just go molto carino and look at our photographs. But of course, we have so many photographs, we lose them, or the computers crash, or the hard drives. I'm trying to think about it a lot because even this new book that I'm doing, I find myself emotionally really disconnected. I'm interested intellectually. I'm interested in talking to people. I'm very busy writing and taking pictures, but there's something in the way that the travelers of yore, perceive the reality that was very different from ours.
So it's maybe the end of the romantic idea of traveling.
I think that's very much the whole grand tour, because first of all, there's no unknown anymore. We really can find it all. And like going to restaurants, I make an effort not to look at the menu beforehand and not to look at other people's Instagrams, because otherwise, what's the point? But many people actually study the whole thing through other social media, and like, okay. But I think the surprise is gone, and a certain kind of intellectual curiosity is gone, and I don't know how to revive it. Frankly, I mean, it's
Do you think that
it's sad.
Do you think that the social media, like TripAdvisor, all these organizations, will keep the memory of this part of history, or they will at a certain point just cancel it and we will be...
I think there will be probably some kind of crash. I mean, look at the hacking that's happening. I mean, someone hacked into America's political system, possibly a government, that influenced the election process. There might be a bug. I think something will crash. Then my feelings about my own archives, media archives, is that of course one day it will be lost.
It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, so I do write. I just I really force myself to write in words, because just the process of writing it on paper, which has become very hard because nobody writes anymore.
But it's a form of selection.
It's a form of selection. It's a form of kind of forcing yourself to pause and just have a quiet moment with it, and I think it's really important.
You are a very famous award-winning food writer. But the history of cuisine is mostly oral, is not written. Do you think we can really put on paper sentiments, abilities, the secret of cuisine?
Well, again, I think the social media has changed everything. We're not putting things on paper, but the oral history is transmitted through, you can talk to there's so much recording going on.
Yes,
like I talk to the pizzaioli and they say, oh, here's my mama before she died, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. So in a way, there's that, but I think we're losing the pre-industrial. I think we're losing a certain generation that had a certain wisdom. I mean, I can see even from my mother, she's 83, her friends are that age. They lived through World War II, they lived through Stalin. In that particular culture, the relationship with food was very different and very intense. They didn't have anything. Well, the Italians, I mean, I just spoke to Greeks. All they talk about is World War II. It still hasn't gone away for a lot of people. That kind of, it is a written history, but it's an oral history of being scared about food insecurity. We don't know what it is anymore, but I think it still influences cultures. And for instance, in Greece, where I just spent over a month, the minute they had started having money, they became very Eurotrash. They looked at Italy, they had expensive coffees and expensive stupid truffles and blah blah, and da da da. They really wanted to revenge on this, moments of very, very difficult history. And now with the crisis, strangely, for the first time, they're going back to their own cuisine. So I think oral history is alive. You can't, it's
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
Already.
just the oral history of the pizza. I mean, I'm talking to all these pizzaioli, and they're just creating their own oral history
At the moment.
At the moment in front of me, and photographing and documenting it. Taking selfies with you. Oh, ho invitato qualcosa. So I think that side of food is not going to go away, and maybe it's going to be recorded better because we have the means to record it. I don't know. It's very tricky right now.
Is there a big difference between what men eat and women eat?
Not really, no, because Ataturk really liberated the women, and women became important parts of society. Like the same thing happened in Russia, and they had important positions. And I mean, men would sit, and drink chai in a chai bachisi in a tea garden, but not really. It was not a sexist culture in that way. Mm-hmm. Now maybe it's becoming because the traditional Islam is coming back, but it's hard to tell. I don't think. Maybe I just haven't thought about it. I don't think of Turkish cuisine as particularly gendered. I mean, there's certain dishes. I mean, men would grill the kebabs. In terms of specialization in restaurants, yes. I mean, first of all, women don't cook much. It's it's something it's almost like something from the Ottoman guild system. In order to make a kebab, you have to be apprentice for 7 years. Then another 7 years, you learn blah 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 blah. So never women would make a baklava. All these things that require long apprenticeship, women. But women would make mante, they would do things with dough, little tortellini. They make those lemeg and things with dough. A lot of things with impasto.
Where hands are very important. And
where hands are important and considered feminine things. And then there's a whole repertoire of kind of homey dishes. But usually restaurant owners tend to be men. Now that you've mentioned it.
You are here also in this university in Naples because we were talking about the Mediterranean diet. Besides what we talked about, what's the opinion you had when you arrived in Naples? Did you have the opinion that the Mediterranean diet exists or it's an invention? What was your approach to the
Well, my first opinion, if I don't get killed by a motorino 3 times a day, then maybe one day I will taste the Mediterranean diet. It's interesting. The way that we Americans perceive the Mediterranean diet, there was a lot of vilification of carbohydrates and white flour, and of course, the first thing you think of Naples is pizza and pasta, so you don't immediately think it's very healthy. I think the Mediterranean diet, more lentils, a different kind of whole grains, whole unrefined things. So the minute you say refined flour, I don't think Mediterranean diet anymore. Maybe it's a matter of perception, as we talked before. Mediterranean diet is made in different things, and the pyramids keep changing, and the new medical studies keep changing. But I haven't thought of Neapolitan cuisine as particularly Mediterranean. I guess it is Mediterranean. It is very Mediterranean. But I think greens, lentils, that kind of thing. When immediately I think Mediterranean diet. I don't think necessarily pizza. Because also we associate pizza in America with something that's fast food and unhealthy, so I have to kind of retool my mind to think, yes, of course, it's...
You probably ate here pasta alla genovese or pasta with ragu or parmigiana di melanzane.
Sì.
Not necessarily, there's always carbohydrates in the dish.
Yeah.
And maybe you ate pasta fagioli, I don't know.
Of course.
Did you?
Yes, of course.
So that's more balanced
Yes.
than the rest of
Yes. No, as you say, it is
image.
Mediterranean. It's just, I'm saying the perception of coming from
But that's very
America
important.
or coming just coming from Greece right now. Because there's a lot of here in Italy also. There's also all this resurrection of ancient grains. That is, some of it is marketing. Like I talked to anthropologists in Greece, and they're like, these are not ancient grains.
Yes.
They just
Italians are fond of kamut at the moment.
Kamut, yes.
That is a very American invention.
Yes, kamut, emmer, all these things. So you kind of think, okay, kamut with friarelli, that would be a Mediterranean diet. Pizza with a lot of cheese.
What do you cook?
God, I don't know. I don't cook. Maybe I cook. I buy something. I buy some Russian ravioli.
Ravioli.
Russian, yeah.
And you drink vodka with it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, still, it's the childhood thing. It's the black bread, the black Russian bread, with a piece of salami. I love salami. Because for Russians it was unattainable. Everybody wanted. It was like this cultural thing, you know, like they called certain immigration the salami immigration, kalbasa, because people wanted salami, like smoked salami.
Yes,
You know, so salami on a piece of black bread.
that's enough.
Yeah. And a pickle. Of course, always a pickle. Always a pickle.
When I went to St. Petersburg, they told me that during the Soviet Union, in the groceries, they used to sell baba. Is it true?
Yeah.
And how was it, this baba, comparing to the Neapolitan one?
It was pretty good actually.
Was
Yeah,
it similar?
Yeah, very similar.
And how?
Baba, we call it baba.
Baba.
Yeah, aroma baba, yeah. It had a glazed, now, there was a Soviet recipe for it, and it had a top that was slightly sugar glazed. It was, you know, the same form,
Yes.
but, you know, on top there was, you know, that white kind of glaze of sugar. Oh, it was delicious.
Was it?
It was really as good as this one, yeah.
I'm glad, because I met a young girl who told me, my grandmother used to tell me that there was this baba, but it's a Soviet thing. I don't want to eat it anymore.
It was a very, so aroma baba. Yep, yeah. It was, no, I remember the taste exactly. It was fantastic.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
So there is something that is connecting your origin with this Neapolitan
In fact, when I
city.
came to Naples, I was very surprised that it was Neapolitan, because I thought it was some kind of French thing like Napoleon or...
It was invented by a Polish.
Yeah,
Yes,
well that's why we had it, yeah, because the dough, yeah.
yes, that's why. So thank you very much.
It's
You're
been a
really
pleasure.
a beautiful person. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.